U.S. House majority is in play next year after a weak GOP midterm showing and recent court ruling. Republican Representative David Schweikert used to win his wealthy, suburban Phoenix congressional district by nearly 30 points. After an anemic showing in the midterms, Republicans have virtually no cushion in their quest to retain control of the House, which was made all the more complicated by a surprise U.S. Supreme Court decision last month that will likely bring two new safely Democratic districts. Few Republicans have high confidence that votes will be tallied accurately in next year's presidential contest, suggesting years of sustained attacks against elections by former President Donald Trump and his allies have taken a toll. Looking to expand the playing field beyond the 18 districts that voted for Biden, Republicans are targeting 37 other districts where they believe a Democratic incumbent is vulnerable. Two Democrats from swing districts, Reps. Alyssa Stotkin in Michigan and Katie Porter in California, are leaving their House seats to run for the Senate, improving the odds for Republicans who won't have to run against an incumbent. Schweikert has walked a fine line, managing to avoid associating too closely with Trump without jeopardizing his path to the GOP nomination. On abortion, he says he opposes it but believes it should be left to the states. More than half of the 18 Republican-held districts that Biden won are in New York and California, two states that defied the midterm Democratic successes in much of the rest of the country. Republicans still see crime and homelessness as potent issues, along with immigration.
A former Trump supporter who got caught up in a January 6 conspiracy theory sues Fox News. A former Donald Trump supporter who became the center of a conspiracy theory about January 6, 2021, filed a defamation lawsuit against Fox News on Wednesday, saying the network made him a scapegoat for the U.S. Capitol insurrection. Shortly before a trial was to begin this spring, Fox agreed to pay Dominion $787 million to settle the charges. Fox did not respond to texts, phone calls and emails seeking comment on Epps' lawsuit. Epps, who had traveled to Washington for the January 6 demonstration, was falsely accused by Fox of being a government agent who was whipping up trouble that would be blamed on Trump supporters, the lawsuit claims. In the aftermath of the events of January 6, Fox News searched for a scapegoat to blame other than Donald Trump or the Republican Party, the lawsuit says. Epps' lawyer, Michael Tetter, noted that Carlson was an employee of Fox when he lied about Ray, and Fox broadcast those defamatory falsehoods. The former Fox star did not respond to a text message seeking comment. The lawsuit displays threatening messages Epps says he received, including one that reads, "Epps, sleep with one eye open." Epps says that in an effort to persuade Trump supporters that he was on their side, he told them, "I'm probably gonna go to jail for this." Epps claims in the lawsuit that he was shocked and disappointed when demonstrators started climbing the scaffolding and walls around the Capitol on January 6. U.S. hits new record for the deadliest 6 months of mass killings. Massacred in small towns, in big cities, inside their own homes or outside in broad daylight. This year's unrelenting bloodshed across the U.S. has led to the grimmest of milestones, the deadliest 6 months of mass killings recorded since at least 2006. From January 1 to June 30, the nation endured 28 mass killings, all but one of which involved guns. The death toll rose just about every week, a constant cycle of violence and grief. "What a ghastly milestone," said Brent Leatherwood, whose 3 children were in class at a private Christian school in Nashville on March 27 when a former student killed 3 children and 3 adults. A mass killing is defined as an occurrence when 4 or more people are slain, not including the assailant, within a 24-hour period. James Allen Fox, a criminology professor at Northeastern University, never imagined records like this when he began overseeing the database about 5 years ago. Tennessee government. Bill Lee, a Republican, had urged the General Assembly in the wake of the Nashville school shooting to pass legislation keeping firearms away from people who could harm themselves or others, so-called red flag laws, though Lee says the term is politically toxic. The Nashville shooter, whose writings Leatherwood and other parents are asking a court to keep private, used 3 guns in the attack, including an AR-15 style rifle. Nearly all of the mass killings in the first half of this year, 27 of 28, involved guns. Despite the unprecedented carnage, the National Rifle Association maintains fierce opposition to regulating firearms, including AR-15 style rifles and similar weapons. Tornado touches down near Chicago's O'Hare Airport. Updates. A tornado touched down near Chicago's O'Hare International Airport, prompting passengers to take shelter and disrupting hundreds of flights. This tornado has been touching the ground intermittently so far and is moving east. Video from TV stations showed hundreds of people taking shelter in an O'Hare concourse. Lynn Becker, a longtime Chicago resident, posted video to Twitter with tornado sirens blaring across the city's iconic skyline. "I'm in a 60-story apartment building, so my options are somewhat limited," he said. "We have to, I assume, go into the core of the building. There's a certain panic when you're watching a TV screen and everything is in red, but the hope is that the damage is minimal," he said. The Weather Service quoted an unidentified emergency manager as saying a roof was blown off in the community of Huntley in McHenry County northwest of Chicago. Building damage appeared to be concentrated around 2 apartment buildings, he said. Earlier Wednesday, the Weather Service's Storm Prediction Center had said there was an enhanced risk for severe weather, including tornadoes in northern Illinois, including Chicago. Between 1855 and 2021, the Weather Service recorded 97 significant tornadoes in the Chicago metro area.
Heat wave brings triple-digit temperatures and fire risk to California. After a historically wet winter and a cloudy spring, California's summer was in full swing Thursday as a heat wave that's been scorching much of the U.S. Southwest brings triple-digit temperatures and an increased risk of wildfires. Midday highs were mostly expected to be above 100 degrees, 37.7 C, and desert areas could reach 120, 48.8 C, forecasters said. If you need to work outside, shift hours to the early morning, take frequent breaks and hydrate. Employers were reminded to adhere to regulations that require outdoor workers are given water, shade and regular breaks to cool off. Across the U.S., more than 111 million people were under extreme heat advisories, watches and warnings, mostly in the Southwest, the National Weather Service reported Wednesday. Forecasters said the long-duration heat wave is extremely dangerous, especially for elderly people, homeless residents and other vulnerable populations. Meanwhile, California's wildfire season was ramping up amid the hot, dry conditions with a series of blazes erupting across the state this week, said Secretary Wade Crowfoot of the Natural Resources Agency. Officials said the state's power system, which was strained to the point of widespread blackouts in recent years, has been fortified and should be able to withstand the latest heat wave.
No deal on Hollywood actor's contract, strike vote will be held Thursday morning, AP News. Los Angeles, AP, the union representing film and television actors says no deal has been reached with studios and streaming services and its leadership will vote on whether to strike later Thursday. The Screen Actors Guild American Federation of Television and Radio Artists said early Thursday that its decision on whether to join already striking screenwriters will be considered by leadership at a meeting later Thursday. If the actors go on strike, it will be the first time since 1960 that actors and writers picket film and television productions. The Actors Guild released a statement early Thursday announcing that its deadline for negotiations to conclude had ended without a contract. The group representing the studios, the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, said it was disappointed by the failure to reach a deal. It added that instead of continuing to negotiate, SAG-AFTRA has put us on a course that will deepen the financial hardship for thousands who depend on the industry for their livelihoods. If the actors strike, they will formally join screenwriters on the picket lines outside studios and filming locations in a bid to get better terms from studios and streaming giants like Netflix and Amazon. Issues in negotiations include the unregulated use of artificial intelligence and the effects on residual pay brought on by the streaming ecosystem that has emerged in recent years. And there are a lot of people whose residual payments are what carry them across that threshold. People are standing up and saying, this doesn't really work, and people need to be paid fairly, Oscar winner Jessica Chastain, who was nominated for her first Emmy Award on Wednesday for playing Tammy Wynette in George and Tammy, told the app.
Kevin Spacey fights back tears as he testifies how sex abuse allegations exploded his career, AP News. London, AP, Kevin Spacey fought back tears and dabbed his eyes with a tissue Thursday as he told jurors in a London court how sexual misconduct allegations 6 years ago had destroyed his career. A man who says Kevin Spacey subjected him to a torrent of verbal abuse and grabbed his crotch has denied making up the allegations. One man who called Spacey a vile sexual predator said he passed out or fell asleep on the actor's London sofa and woke up to find him performing oral sex. The accuser had testified that Spacey's fondling culminated when the man was driving and Spacey grabbed his crotch so violently he almost ran off the road. That never happened, Spacey testified. It was like a cobra coming out and getting hold. Addressing the most serious charge in the case, Spacey raised his voice and denied the suggestion he drugged a man before assaulting him. "I know the way I am with someone, and I would never be behaving in the way he claimed. It makes no logical sense," he said. At least 2 of the men have also filed suit against Spacey. Spacey said he fought that case the same way he has in London, but doggedly digging through old records, boxes of photos and any evidence that could disprove the claims.
Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor's staff prodded colleges and libraries to buy her books. For colleges and libraries seeking a boldface name for a guest lecturer, few come bigger than Sonia Sotomayor, the Supreme Court justice who rose from poverty in the Bronx to the nation's highest court. Sotomayor's staff has often prodded public institutions that have hosted the justice to buy her memoir or children's books, works that have earned her at least $3.7 million since she joined the court in 2009. This is one of the most basic tenets of ethics laws that protects taxpayer dollars from misuse, said Kedrick Payne, a former deputy chief counsel at the Office of Congressional Ethics and current general counsel for the Campaign Legal Center, a nonpartisan government watchdog group in Washington. Then, as the public cost of hosting the event soared almost tenfold, a Sotomayor aide emailed with a different, urgent concern. She said the organizers did not buy enough copies of the justice's book, which attendees had to purchase or have on hand in order to meet Sotomayor after her talk. Families purchase multiples and people will be upset if they are unable to get in line because the book required is sold out. As Sotomayor prepared for commencement weekend at the University of California, Davis Law School, her staff pitched officials there on buying copies of signed books in connection with the event. Such promotional efforts risk damaging the Supreme Court's public standing further by placing an individual justice above the institution itself, said J. Michael Luttig, a former federal appeals court judge who has pushed for the justices to adopt a formal code of conduct. A person close to Sotomayor, who insisted on anonymity to discuss the justice's book dealings, said that Sotomayor has not and will not profit from sales of her memoir beyond the $3.1 million advance that she received, and that doing so would require purchases of hundreds of thousands of additional books, more than double the purchases to date. When the free tickets were quickly snapped up, she asked library officials to publicize that those who could not get tickets could still meet the justice if they purchased a book. Justice Clarence Thomas has collected about $1 million since 2006. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who was confirmed in 2020, received a reported $2 million advance for a forthcoming book. In Sotomayor's case, her staff routinely brought up books in emails as trip details were discussed.
How DOJ made different death penalty decisions in Pittsburgh synagogue and Texas mall shootings. AP News. President Joe Biden campaigned in part on a promise to abolish the U.S. death penalty. In 2021, Garland announced a moratorium on federal executions while a review of execution procedures is completed. And the department hasn't authorized death penalties for any of around 400 new indictments during Biden's presidency that carried capital sentences. The department has fought as hard under Biden as under Trump to defeat all bids by some 40 inmates on federal death row in Terre Haute, Indiana, to have their death sentences tossed on racial bias and other grounds. An Associated Press review of court filings and Biden-era staff guides offers clues about what influences the Justice Department's decisions. They suggest the department is most likely to okay death sentences for racist and terrorist attacks and when victims' families support it. In April court filings explaining its Bowers decision, the department noted most victims' families wanted Bowers to die if convicted. Responding to criticism, the department also denied its decision was inconsistent with those concerning Crusius and others, saying Bowers' shooting stood apart because older victims were uniquely vulnerable and the crime occurred in a house of worship. Death penalty foes say Biden's department should be judged by the standard Biden set himself and should oppose all executions, including Bowers. GOP White House hopefuls face mounting pressure to stop Trump in Iowa. AP News. Des Moines, Iowa, AP. As the 6-month sprint to the Iowa caucuses begins, the sprawling field of Republican presidential candidates is facing growing pressure to prove they can become serious challengers to former President Donald Trump. For now, however, he has struggled to generate the level of enthusiasm that Trump commands from the GOP base, contributing to uncertainty that DeSantis will become the threat to the former president that he was once billed to be. But the Iowa Republican Party's recent announcement that the caucuses would take place on January 15, weeks earlier than the past 3 open contests, reinforced the reality that candidates aiming for a turnaround are on a timeline. Beyond DeSantis, Tim Scott is being closely scrutinized. The South Carolina senator has impressed many with an agenda that is every bit as conservative as the one offered by Trump or DeSantis. But some say Scott is distinguishing himself with an aggressive outreach strategy paired with an upbeat message. Still, Trump is the undisputed leader in Iowa, similar to the grip he holds on Republicans nationally. "There's no question Donald Trump is winning Iowa right now," said Josie Albrecht, a former top Iowa GOP State House communications advisor who is advising the state party but is neutral in the 2024 campaign. But a central challenge for Republicans is to hone a message that resonates with voters who have backed Trump, but are open to others in 2024. Americans for Prosperity, the political arm of the Koch brothers operation, is working to explicitly undermine Trump in Iowa and other early contest states. The super PAC supporting DeSantis, meanwhile, has prioritized promoting the governor without attacking Trump, which advisors say turns off his past supporters. DeSantis appears to be shifting his early state strategy to some degree. And while some would-be DeSantis donors have raised concerns, others are moving away from Trump in favor of the governor.